Meet Tom. He works for an equipment manufacturer in Ohio. It is his job to increase the company's international sales. To find a foreign company to purchase his equipment, he spends hundreds of thousands of dollars using Google AdWords and SEO, going to domestic and international trade shows, transporting his equipment from the shop to the show, advertising in traditional construction publications, and dedicating time and money to working with foreign agents and brokers uncertain as to whether or not they will generate sales. Now meet John. He works for a construction company in Kenya. It is his job to procure equipment based upon specifications submitted to him by the company's engineers. To find the right supplier, he uses Google, like the rest of us mortals, goes to trade shows, looks at construction publications, and works with local trade offices such as the U.S. Commercial Services. We have launched Wasoko.co to save Tom and John time and money by matching them based upon John's equipment specifications. Think the Mass.com for the equipment and machinery industry. Hi, I'm Travis. I worked in trade finance for 4 years, becoming very frustrated by the lack of presence of U.S. manufacturers in international markets and small manufacturers' lack of resources to compete internationally. This experience and a discussion with the VP of Trade Finance in a major U.S. bank led me to found Phoenix Ventures. More on this in a minute. Meet Carlos. He's a hustler out of UIC and started as an intern in the spring, cold calling companies around Latin America, and has since become a co-founder, continuing to sharpen his skills on strategy and drawing prospects into our funnel for customer and solution interviews. Now this person, it could be you. We are interested in beginning the dating process with a technical co-founder. Want to help the world grow through trade with the U.S.? Then continue to watch this video. If you're interested, shoot us an email. Now, back to Phoenix Ventures. As mentioned, the first iteration of Wasoko.co was actually another company called Phoenix Ventures. It was part of a portfolio of services which included trade finance. Its model was heavily dependent on finance, and the payer was the buyer. Much of this would soon change. We found about the Lean Startup Challenge merely a few days prior to the cutoff date and decided, why not? On day one during boot camp, we realized we had basically wasted the past couple months pushing an MVP, which is solving the wrong problems. On that day, we decided to start over, throwing everything out, so it would increase the probability of getting to revenue as soon as possible. Our first big change was switching the payer to the U.S. supplier based upon the total available market, manufacturers being the traditional payer in this market, and advice from a mentor. Once we had the payer figured out, we had to decide on the revenue model. Using a back-of-the-napkin approach, based upon a universe of 250 manufacturers from a construction company prospect list, we tested a subscription and finder's fee revenue model. We figured out the average finder's fee manufacturers would be willing to pay by going back to customer interviewees to ask how much they would pay for a qualified lead. On average, they're willing to pay 3%. To reach $1 million in revenue, we would need to capture approximately 0.7% of the market. To test the subscription model, we looked at traditional advertising in Alibaba, a comparable model for equipment sales. Based upon the two different models, we would need over 100% market share and 57% market share to reach $1 million in revenue respectively. Taking this into consideration, we decided to go forward with a finder's fee model. Once decided, we went out to the manufacturers previously interviewed to get them to commit to a finder's fee. Today, we have 6 manufacturers signed up to pay a finder's fee. As a U.S. company that must be international from day one, international key partners would be essential to promoting Wasoko.co in foreign markets. So to get started, we reached out to Mr. Seeker in India, Willie in Indonesia, Arturo in Chile, and George in Brazil. Today, we are working with Willie and George to formalize our partnerships to begin promoting Wasoko.co in Latin America and Indonesia. Customer interviews were key to getting us on track and on our way to an MVP. What we learned from manufacturers were really 2 things. One, our first hypothesis was that manufacturers want to increase international sales, but do not have the resources to get in front of the right people. Based upon interviews, the top problem manufacturers noted was not being able to get in front of the right customers when they are ready to buy. Our second hypothesis was that a critical function of our MVP would provide aftermarket support. What we heard from manufacturers is that it's not really that big of a deal, that as long as they can get in front of the customer, they're able to figure out what the adequate amount of aftermarket support would be in order to close the deal. So it really just reinforced our first point. And then we went back to buyers. Our first hypothesis was that they spend a lot of time and money finding the right suppliers. We tested this with solution interviews and found people such as John want to use our platform to match with suppliers. The key issue is that they have to have a current need. So John, at that point, had no need to purchase capital equipment. So it definitely raises a concern for us going forward and a problem to be solved. How do we find buyers with a current need? Our second hypothesis was that providing a finance option was a critical component of an MVP. After a solid conversation with a friend, we went back to look at customer interviews and found not a single buyer had finance as a top 3 problem with buying capital equipment. We have since dropped it and now focused on our MVP. Considering it would take considerable resources to build Wasoko.co to be a true digital matching service, we are starting with a concierge MVP to work through the process and smooth out kinks. So here's how it works. John submits his equipment specifications to Wasoko.co. Carlos and I find the U.S. supplier to fulfill the orders. For suppliers without agreements, we set up finder's fee agreements with them. Then we go back to John with either a quote or questions from the supplier so that they can then generate a quote. Once John selects a quote, we make the introductions. Based upon our interviews, our MVP ensures John matches based upon quality and cost, and the supplier has a qualified lead ready to purchase equipment. And as soon as that equipment has been purchased, the manufacturer pays us the agreed upon finder's fee. Although we are not done using customer input to create a sustainable business model, our experience in the Chicago Lean Startup has been amazing and helped us get closer to revenue. Although we didn't make any major pivots, we have discovered a solid foundation for our business model, one that can lead to not only revenue, but helping create U.S. jobs by helping non-U.S. companies grow through trade with the U.S. We're done. We appreciate you watching. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to touch base with that trade at wasoko.co. This has been an amazing experience putting this video together, as both of us are not technical people, but we have made it through. The struggle is real, and we look forward to many more struggles ahead.